right. Test some settings. Make sure everything's working the way it needs to. Big time. Nice. All right, away we go. Today we're gonna continue the series graphic that I was working on the last time we did this stream on Friday. I need to have it done. I'd love to have it done today if possible, but really the next couple days. And so I always like, if possible, sometimes your deadlines don't allow this, but I'm a really big fan of allowing myself a night's sleep in between phases of the project. Whatever the project is I'm working on, I feel like I do better work when I'm able to sleep on it. So today, I've had now a weekend. It's been kind of in the back of my mind, how am I going to resolve some of these things? What are the things I'm going to emphasize? Are there any particular challenges that I'm anticipating? In some cases, this is a helpful part of the process to then bring the client back into the conversation to say, hey, I'm stuck on a couple things. I would love for you to speak in, remind me of the vision behind this piece, remind me of the purpose behind this piece. Actually, as I say that, I'm going to pull up the working document that they gave me about the actual series so that I have that within reach here to be able to revisit it. So this is going to be a 3-week series. I'm going to open the file up here. So actually you can see here the past series. So God's story is the overarching theme. And then on the right, we see building blocks, then we see kingdom people, and then we see rebel prophet, then wisdom talks, and then tough texts, the one that we're working on next. And then there's also one down on the second row to the right, Jesus has come. That was the Christmas graphic, same vibe overall. And so, yeah, these are all the different assets attached to this project. So I'm going to jump in here. And so this is where we're at currently. We also have the overwhelming mountains, which is going to be a whole nother thing to navigate. But I want to revisit the topic that this is being, or what's being covered in the series. Anytime I'm creating a series graphic, I really want to make sure that I am paying attention to what the teacher is going to be walking us through. I do not believe that visuals are supposed, at least in the church, are supposed to be powerful independent of the content that's being covered. So I'm a really big advocate for leadership, whoever it is, it's the speaker, whatever entity is deciding and driving where we're going with this series. They need to be communicating that to the communications team or the artist or the creative, whatever it looks like, so that they can partner with what's being communicated. So these are not illustrations that are designed to be neat illustrations. That's not what this is about. So let me actually back up and give you an example of this in the context of this series. So Kingdom People had 5 weeks attached to it. And so there's 5 towers. Each one had a different emphasis. It was a different example of the kingdom nature of the people that God had chosen, Israel. And it's represented with this crown that is also playing around with this idea of not a castle, but a group of people that has been separated, that's been chosen, that's protected. It's meant to be multiple layers of what's being talked about in the series, visualized. Whether people get all of that or not is largely irrelevant in the sense that it's enhancing what's being communicated, and it offers the opportunity for people to go deeper. in their understanding. And the visuals then are affirming it. The visuals are elevating, this is what is being talked about. So that to me is what I am trying to accomplish whenever I have a visual that I'm communicating. So back to the first document, or this series that I'm now currently working on, Tough Texts. What is it that they're going to be talking about? And so there's 3 different things that they have given me because this is a 3-week series. So there's going to be 3 specific topics. And we talked a little bit about this in the beginning because this goes into the framing of all of these different visuals. But what about the laws of the Old Testament? What about the role of women? And then what about some of the things that happened in the Old Testament in terms of the stories, and some of them are pretty gnarly. Like, what do we do with that? So we're seeing a lot of things here that are complicated. These are the things that when we read through Scripture, we're like, what does this mean? So we're in Leviticus, we're in Deuteronomy. There's a story in Joshua and in 1 Samuel that they're going to be talking about. So this is the nature of what's being communicated in the series. So now as I approach Tough Texts as a visual, how can I represent some of those challenges in the way that I'm creating the piece? How do I illustrate this piece in a way that brings some of these things to the forefront? So that's what I'm trying to wrestle through. So I want to have this visible and in my line of sight here, so that I can quickly look up and reference, all right, what is it that we're trying to accomplish here in this series? So that is the goal. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And so now we're going to jump in. We have the text finished. We have the landscape largely finished. There's not a lot that needs to go into this in terms of a landscape. I could continue some of these trees if I wanted to. That would give it a little bit more, I don't know, it would give it a nice continuation. One thing I'm noticing though, the colors here, it looks like I pulled the wrong green, so I'm going to actually recolor that. Again, this is one of those things where it's like, I didn't notice it, and so now I notice it, and so I'm going to fix it. There we go. Oh, that's interesting. So it looks like, oh, I see. Yep, okay. Okay, perfect. So then let me put this, put our region line and our mountains back on here just to make sure everything's jiving. Yeah, all right, that looks good. So now we wrestle with how we want this text to live in this space. I'm going to play around with a couple things and just sort of see what happens. So first, I'm going to get rid of this part of it, the tough texts part, because that simply exists to give me a reminder of what I'm supposed to be doing. Make sure I have the right brushes. I've been playing around with a new brush set, and so I have to make sure that I'm going back through and resetting things back to the brush that I'm using for this project. This is an interesting part of illustration. Hopefully you're growing as you do this. As you continue to execute, you're growing. And what that means is that sometimes you want to make a shift in your style. And so I actually found a brush set that I absolutely love. And I'm switching all of my work to that, but we're in the middle of a series, and so I don't want to switch to this new brush set until we're done. So I think actually this brush is fine. I just need to, yeah, there we go. Okay, great. So we're back on the regular brush set. I will make sure that my eraser, go back to that as well. Okay, these are all the little things that, yeah, if you miss it, then you end up eating a good amount of time. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play around with my layout a little bit. And I'm just going to move stuff around and see if there's a place where I like it. Because what I want to happen here is I want there to be difficulty somehow being expressed in the way that this is laid out, if that's even possible. What I'm thinking at the moment is maybe even putting something like a rope bridge or something that kind of visualizes a challenge or difficulty or that kind of thing. One issue I'm going to run into a little bit here is I want to make sure that the text pops above the mountain ranges. And so that means that'll probably be okay right there. So that, so what I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to evaluate it. So this, let me figure out a way to mark this so you can see what I'm thinking. So this mountain, this mountain, this mountain, yeah, and maybe this mountain and these little guys are going to be the forefront mountains, and then everything else will be behind it. And so what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start erasing some of these mountains that I've drawn, and then I'm going to have to either rebuild them with the correct perspective, or maybe even carve out certain areas where where it's doing what it needs to do. But I need to nestle the base of these letters by, like, at the what I'd like to do is catch it on these early slopes. What I don't want is this peak to be in front. So if a peak is going to be, like, if a mountain's going to be blocking too much text, this right here, it's going to have to go behind the T. And so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start erasing, and I'm going to start erasing the mountains, and worst case here, I just redraw them. So it feels like a commitment, but you know, we're going to be okay. we're going to make it through. So let's just start. That's not the right tool. Now, let's just start. Okay. This is kind of a fun part of the process because at this point it's destructive in the sense that what I'm erasing is being erased as opposed to just like layering a color over it. But what it's doing is it's really making the depth of the illustration come to life. And so that's fun. I think that's a really fun part of the process. And I love it because this to me is really the power, or maybe power is the right word. This is the fun of illustration. You can make a commitment and not be penalized for it. Like, essentially what happens here is if it's like, oh, I should have left that one. Oh, okay, cool. You didn't. So what are you going to do about it? I'm just going to redraw it. I mean, there's really there's no problem here with me just redrawing things. So I'm going to just get rid of that whole mountain on this one. Because again, I want it to be covered at the bottom. Like, that's important for the effect of the depth. And so I'm going to need to make some what feels like high commitment decisions here. But I have to do that in order to decide whether or not I like the decisions that I'm making. So here's a great example. The T is completely covered by this mountain unless it sits in front of it. It doesn't make sense to sit in front of it because the range that is being covered this is a part of it. And so this mountain is going to have to go really just entirely. So that's what's going to happen. This guy's going to be behind it. So there are ways you can do this non-destructive. You can just paint over it with another layer. I feel like that actually, for me, that ends up getting more complicated than I'm looking to. I feel like oops, let me see if I can pull the brightness up a little bit for myself here. There we go. Okay, it feels like it's a little bit dim. So yeah, so that's one of the tensions that you run into here is that you have to commit to the decisions that you're making. And if you don't commit, you're really not going to get a sense as to whether or not it works. This is why illustration tends to take a good amount of time, because you got to commit. I'm erasing mountain ranges. And if I don't like it, then I'm redrawing mountain ranges. And that's okay. That's good. Okay, great. So that'll be fine. All right, so now we're getting a pretty good picture here as to what this looks like in the range. So now I'm going to redraw some mountains because we need to put some of this range back in. So what would it look like for this range to exist again? So now what I can do is I can place the peak of the mountain at a smarter place now that I have the text in place. Perfect. And then we need another one over here. I'm going to draw that one a little bit wide so that it hits that. Okay, I don't love this one. So one of the things I did on that draw is I did it in one swoop. I don't like that as much. I like there being a peak that forms. It's a little bit sharper than what I was getting when I curved around. Okay, good. All right, that feels pretty good. This one I don't like either. So we're going to adjust that. So here the trick is going to be, at least in my mind, how much can I cover? Because I actually do want to cover quite a bit because I love the depth effect that happens without losing the visual, like the understandability of the letter. So this peak wasn't prominent enough now. So let's drop it in there. And so again, we're going to go back through here and we're going to add the snow cap, you know, but like this one be like that. So I like that. I'm feeling it. Let's get this guy a little bit more visibility as well. Because what we're doing is we're emphasizing the depth now as we refine these mountain ranges. And that's just going to make the final piece stronger. Perfect. So it means we're going to revise the connecting guys a little bit too. And then clean that up. Perfect. So now we have a whole ridge, or a whole thing behind that. The T is going to be resting up against it. And then this line here would continue to be here. So none of that needs to be drawn in again. Okay. So we have texts covered. One issue is going to be this guy here. There's going to be a line. Let me do this. I'm actually going to adjust this peak a touch, the trajectory of it, because I want it to line up down here more. Because then again, we're giving ourselves some clearer depth. That's what we're trying to do. So we remove this. It's going to make it clear it's behind the X. Okay, so we have the X nestled between two ranges. Tough is going to be up next. All right, let me check. Okay, great. For those of you jumping in, a piece of this, obviously I'm working on a graphic. So there you go. Join me. Join me as we build a graphic together. But also, this to me it's a great opportunity to talk church communications. And so if you have questions, if you have issues, if you're curious about something, need an idea for your own work, I mean, let's chat. Shoot something in the chat and we'll talk, we'll talk through it as we're working. I find that when I'm working on a project is a great time to have conversations about some of this stuff. My mind's like engaged enough, but not so much that I can't have these conversations. And so let's talk it out. Let's have a conversation about some things. All right. So one thing I'm seeing here is, well, let's actually try this. I'm going to back up. I'm going to go a little bit further out. So here's what I was thinking. I was thinking to myself, this area right here, I'd like to see more depth, more separation. And as I'm looking down this range here, all I'm seeing is that there are a lot of really big mountains. And so I'm going to have to redraw a lot when it comes to the depth for tough. But let's try this first. Before we go down this major edit road, let's look at what does it mean to move this guy around. I think it'd be kind of cool if he pops out of the mountain range a little bit. Maybe that's the right play. It's kind of fun. If I push him back a little bit more, we have, ooh yeah. So now we have a range that he could be in front of, but then on the T, but it can be in front of the foothills. So there's some of that depth that's being taken care of. And then I can rework this range a little bit to make them just a little bit smaller. And then that's going to be an easier way. I like that. Honestly, I can almost lose a whole range in the middle positioned here. So now the question is, does it read easily enough as tough texts, or does it need to be closer together? I like it closer together. I don't think it has to be closer together. One advantage that we get if we go farther apart is if we decide to include something that connects them, we have a really interesting amount of distance that kind of covers that. So let's try it here. I like that. And so then what I can do is I can just do a quick pass. Let me go back to my mountains and do a quick pass here, erasing some of these elements that'll be in front of. Oh wait, I did that wrong. I would like the T to be behind this guy. There we go, but in front of these. There we go. And we have a little color problem right here on part of the T, but it doesn't really matter because the T itself is going to be colored here pretty soon. And so I don't have to worry about navigating that just yet. So there's the T. I like it. I like how it sits there. And so what are we going to do about the O? Part of me wonders if we can leave. Oh boy. I don't know. This feels like I'm pushing the limits a little bit here. So let me try. I'm going to remove this whole mountain right here. I'm going to rebuild it a little bit. This is what I'm going to do now because it's a minor, like visually it's a small adjustment. It's big compositionally, but it's one of those adjustments that if I don't do it now, I'm probably going to forget about it. And so I want to make sure I draw everything back in that needs to be in. This stuff is gone now. I'm gonna play with this. I'm probably gonna adjust this mountain right here a little bit, but I'm gonna leave it for now. I'm gonna drop this major range because that's blocking too much. Also blocking this, getting rid of this. So this is where I was saying I could probably just get rid of a whole range here and put tough in the middle of it. These guys are going to be behind. Oops. This guy's going to be behind. And this guy's going to be gone. So now what we're losing a connecting point between the next tile. I could actually leave that line in there. That's fine. That implies a little bit. Probably implies enough to make it interesting. Doesn't need this this guy here. And so then what I'll probably do, I'm going to lose this line again. And I'm going to add some new mountains in that do a little bit more. Let's see how they're going to go. So I think I'm going to do one from here. And then I'll do another one here. So long term, this will go like that. And then we'll do another one like this. That's great. And so then that gives us some of that connection between the two spaces. This one is going to be a line here-ish. And so I guess the question is, could I do another one here? Probably. Yeah, that feels good. And then because this line on the top of the H hits the boundary, I can do whatever I want. You know, I can have that be a connection point. So, but that feels pretty good. I don't love that the H is not as covered. I would like it covered a little bit more. So let me go ahead and clear these guys out. That's just sort of a where am I going with this illustration when I finish the last tile. And so that's what, it's just a way for me to begin. I'm going to forget these details, but that's going to help me build a composition today that will be compatible in the future. And so then I'm going to do, can I do one more? How do I, first let's do this. I want to drop this range. I'm going to need to drop actually a lot of this range. So I'm going to start with the G. I'm not sure this is the right place to start, but it is where I'm starting. So I'm going to start here. And then I'm going to go down to the T. I'm actually going to lose this mountain. I'm going to shift it upward so that a little bit of that H is covered as well. I want more of that H covered. H is going to be an easy letter to read. So you can cover more of it. The G is interesting because there's some complexity there. You know, you have to think to yourself, what is the visual element of a G that needs to be read? It's that little crook area where you learn that it's not a C, and you need to be able to see that whole area. U is the same. Right now, if I don't free up this U at all, this is what you're going to see. And that's not helpful. I don't know what that means. Right now it's awa, like it doesn't make any sense. So we're going to drop down this range right here. And we're going to free that U a little bit. So it's going to be, where did that come from? Oh, okay. So now it'll be a lower start and a lower finish. And then we're going to get rid of that. And then we're going to extend this guy back down. Now there's a chance I could interject. Oh, let's do that. Let's lose this guy completely. And then let's do, oh yeah, that's fun. So now what we're doing is we're focusing on using our perspective on the areas of the letters that don't actually impede readability. So the other place that I'm going to have to jump in is actually going to be right there, because this range is just a little bit too dynamic to make this what I need it to be. So this, we're starting to get actually into more of like a foothill level. I don't like this guy. So I'm going to drop him again. I think I've dropped some of these guys multiple times. He's there. We do need something in that space. That feels a lot better. And then this guy's going to go down, all the way down. And then we're going to have to reevaluate. Does this need, maybe, let's do this. Let's drop him over here and then have him go down. Yep. And this is better. So now we're just cleaning up this area to make it more compatible now that we have all of the elements involved. So that first pass of all the mountains was important because we needed to get a sense of what exactly are we working on here? Like what's the scope that we're trying to accomplish? Like what's the full range of things? And then now that it's all on the board, you know, I hear this a lot with writing. You can't edit a document that doesn't have words on it. So if you're struggling to write, you just need to get words out. You need to put words on the board, because if you don't get your words out onto the paper, you're not going to have anything to edit. So you're just going to be stuck sitting there staring at a blank document. That's the worst, man. There's nothing worse than staring at a blank document, because you can't go anywhere with that. And so same here. I needed to throw some mountains down so I had a good sense of what I'm trying to accomplish. Now that mountains are down, I can tell you I don't like them or they're not working, but I know why. If I wait and if I wait to put the mountains down until I know exactly where they're going to go, it's just going to take me forever. So I don't want to do that. That's not the best approach to solving these problems. You get stuck for too long. All right. Let's see here. So I'm going to go back over my color layer real quick and just color in some of these areas that I've just made adjustments to, because the foothills have gotten extended just a touch in some of these areas. In other areas, the foothills have gotten reduced, and so I'm going to go to my purple for the mountains here, fill that back over. And so now I'm just cleaning it up so that visually I can see what I've done, and I can get a sense of what's going on from there. So, all right, so here we are. We got our tough text. It looks good. It's readable in all the right places. Yep. Okay, and there's a few other areas to clean up color-wise here. So we shall. Here. I'm going to ask a question in the chat, actually. Love. You go. Let's see what the name of your next weekend series is. I would love to hear that. Message pin. Beautiful. All right. This one is tough texts. Love it. Okay. So now I'm going to try to reorient a little bit here. And then I'm going to go. I'm trying to decide between now is, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to erase these, the pieces of the letters that need to be erased. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually create a duplicate layer here because I don't want to lose this. So I grouped them. Now I'm duplicating them. And so this is going to be called, I'm going to call this one OG, or I'll just say full text. I like naming things OG, but full text. Okay. And then this one is off, and I'm actually going to move it way down here. And then this one is, I'm going to flatten it because I'm going to work on the same layer. I'm going to rename it. This is going to be trimmed text. So at this point, I'm not ready to commit. I'm not ready to go lossless or full trim, full edit, full erase commitment level. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to start erasing these pieces of the letter forms that are behind the mountain ranges. Because then what it's going to do is it's going to show me really clearly if this is working or not. And so rather than having to redraw all of these, not the end of the world, but I know that I'm going to have to redraw some of them if it's not working. And so I'd rather keep the original text in its independent layers and then really just commit with this layer and say, do I like it, yes or no? And then go from there. Already I can tell you, I think this is going to be a winner. So that's encouraging. So all of that is behind. And then this guy here is gone. The other part that I really need to evaluate is, so with all of these pieces of the letter forms actually gone, is it still legible? If it's not legible, we got a problem, because clarity and legibility is the priority here. It is always my priority when it comes to the graphics that I'm creating for churches, really for anything. It's just my philosophy on communications. If you're not communicating clearly, why even try? Like, if it's going to be super convoluted and cryptic and hard to read and hard to understand, I'm like, get out of here. You're not communicating then. And that's the whole point, is communicate. All right, that looks pretty good to me. I want to put some color in it, and I will. So let's do that. This is going to be another layer of color. I don't want to mix this one. So that way I have a separated layer to be able to play with. I'm really interested in like a brighter tone here. Let's see what we have on our palette. Ooh, we have a yellowish orangish. Let's try that. That's really going to pop with the orange. So let's give that a whirl and see what that ends up looking like. So we are on our text color layer. Excellent. We stop there. Oh, what have I done? Oh, yeah, my color layer is above the mountain layer. So let me adjust that so that we don't get confused. But already, oh my, that's popping. I like it a lot. There we go. Just looking to go behind it. That's all. Thanks. Okay, great. Yeah. All right. Let's keep going. This is working. Let me see here. All right. So these brushes work okay at being able to draw the outline and then just drop the fill in. When you do a textured brush, it does create a little bit of complexity in Procreate because you're not always getting a hard line. And so what it'll do is this. See how there's these little oh, those are actually not it. Actually, this one looked like it did pretty. Here we go, over here on the side. It does a little bit of a like, oh, so close kind of a shadow, or like a weird like line within the line. I don't know, a line within the fill that doesn't look right. What these little dots are, these are from the mountain layer when I didn't clear everything enough when I erased the mountains. I mean, or apparently that's not what it is. Oh, text, trim text. That's what it is. It's always a trick figuring out what layer that line is from. Let's go here. I need to move text color up above region lines because that's messing me up. Making it just a touch slower. Okay, and then I can see over here on the T I missed some lines on the outside here. Okay. So everything is pretty good. Probably getting a little bit more detailed than I need to be right now. I really do like getting a good preview of where we're going and what we're going to expect to see as we keep progressing. You know, there's always this tension of how far do you resolve something when you're in the creation, in the process of creating. And I don't really know if there's a hard line that can be applied to everyone in every situation. All I know is that over the years, I have learned sort of instinctively what I need to see before I can make a decision. And so that may be the case for you as well, that as you have more experience in this place of, you know, working through your creative ideas, you reach a point where you're like, you know what, I'm going to need to see a little bit more right here. Or in some cases, like, no, I can tell right away. That's not going to work out. So when you grow, or as you grow, you get faster at that, and your efficiency increases because you're able to read a non-working idea faster. But you know, there are times where you do need to pursue it further, and that's okay. You know, I think understanding the difference between those two is the difference between a very skilled artist, illustrator, designer, you know, musician, whatever creative endeavor, being able to know when to keep chasing and to know when to pull the plug on something, I think is a really, really clear indicator of a skill and expertise in your trade. All right, we got a line missing over here. So the G does not have the line that it needs to complete that. Does that look right? No, it's off the axis a little bit. Let's see here. This is part of the problem. That is not straight. And I'm going to erase straight down. And then I'm going to need to try to hit this axis line right. There we go. Perfect. Okay, great. And then back to color. And back to the orange that we're going to be rolling with here. At least for now, we're going to be rolling with. The other part of this element, or this piece of the process, is if we don't like the color, there's no issue with that because we can easily swap out the color. So that's a piece of why I'm willing to fill these things in completely, because we can switch out the color without any issue. And then as I'm going, I'm recognizing that there's a little bit of, there's some fragments, some elements that are not fully completed or fully erased or whatever. And so I'm going to clean those up as I go. So that's what I'm doing here. You'll see some of those little black specks. And so then I have to figure out what layer was it on, and then I find it, and then I erase it. So this is a multifaceted part of the process. It's both getting a sense of what is here and how, is this looking the way we want it to look as we move forward, but it's also, hey, let's clean it up while we're here. All right, let's do another pass of orange here. This feels like I don't know, almost like an orange juice. Is that a fair assessment of this color? That's how it looks to me. We had a yellow kitchen in our last house. And in the morning and in the evening, or really it was in the evening as the sun set on those back, so it set toward the back, and there was a window looking into the backyard. And the yellow, it was kind of like an orange yellow, mostly yellow, but man, when the light hit it, goodness gracious, it just turned to this like incredible like orange juice looking color. It was great, really bright and cheery. I thought. I like yellow though, and I like orange. So some people might say it's hideous. Well, that's great. I disagree. So all right, coming along. So now we got tough finished. Let's see what we look. I like it. I'm feeling it. We're gonna add some shadow, as kind of the next phase of it. But man, the text is very visible. Where I know that we're gonna be wrestling is gonna be what are these elements that are uniquely characteristic of this series. And so I'm gonna draw maybe some darker elements. Nothing like crazy dark, but what are some of these hard issues that we got to wrestle with in Scripture, So I may put a graveyard. There's a lot of death, a lot of complicated ideas when it comes to life and death, and some of these stories of war in the Old Testament. And so the series isn't shying away from it. So why would I? I'm not going to get over the top with it, but I mean, we want to be true to the graphic, or we want to be true to the nature of the series. That's another piece of what a series graphic does, is it sets the tone and the expectation for those who see it to begin to wrap their minds around where we're going. There's a lot of discussion in the church about should a church do series, or should it only be expository teaching and blah, blah, blah. That's great. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it falls into the category of what the pastor thinks is the best way to disciple the body of believers that have been placed under their care. I see huge advantages to expository, and I see big advantages to topical as well. And so there have been times where I've tired of topical and I would like to switch to expository, but I don't think it's reasonable to say that there's only one right answer. And I'm sure that's a hot topic, I guess humorously a hot topic, but I do think I do think you don't want to get stuck in in being just topical. I think that's not the right play. And so, yeah, anyway, that's an aside. But one of the things that is true is that the graphics that you put out for whatever series, expository or not, you are setting an expectation and you're setting a tone for what's going to be communicated. That's a big part of the job of a series graphic. And so if you're having a dark series, if it's a heavy series, then you're going to want to have graphics that are a little heavier than they're not, you know? And so we had many years ago, we had a series called Supernatural. And so it was supernatural, like made a ton of sense to do what we did in terms of our final decision making in terms of presenting the graphic. And so that's a lot of what you're thinking through when you're working on a graphic. You know, again, it's not just a pretty graphic. It's supposed to be, my vantage point at least, it's supposed to be a teaching element. It's supposed to be a contributor toward what's happening from the stage. And so I want my series graphics to point people in the direction that we're going to be heading so that they can prepare for it. Sometimes I believe that happens on a subconscious level. I think they see a graphic and they see dark tones. You know, I think about color theory. So they see dark tones and they say, okay, well, what does darkness represent? They don't think about it. They feel it. They sense it. They observe it. It impacts them. And so the colors that I choose matter a lot in terms of the graphics that I'm creating. And so in this instance, we're obviously going to need contrast. And so people have to be able to read the text. But what else can I put in this graphic in terms of elements then, you know, if it's not just color? And so I don't want it to be only whimsical. You know, that's one of the values for this whole series, is want it to be whimsical, kind of storybook, that kind of vibe, which is why we landed on designing it or illustrating it rather than designing it, because it really helped capture some of that charm and that character. So the next question then becomes, okay, so what are the elements that we include as well? And so we've had some fun little Easter eggs in the past ones. So the congregation is familiar with that approach and even familiar with leaning in a little bit and studying some of these graphics maybe at a deeper level. So now that we've done that, okay, what are the things that we want to include that drive home what we're talking about? And so that's going to be, I think that's going to be the trickiest part of this one, is figuring out what those elements are and including them without all of a sudden making the graphic like weirdly dark and heavy. Because we don't want to put it into a place where it's no longer accessible, or worse, people are like, I don't want to go to that. That's not what we're looking for. And sometimes, you know, historically, sometimes I've pushed the envelope on these too far. There's a series that we had, and it was about like friction or tension. And we created a sound for the intro video that was too much. Pastor didn't like it, and he said so from the stage. And so then what we did is we unintentionally made an entire congregation of people not excited to hear about what they were going to hear about. And so we resolved that, mostly in, you know, having that conversation to say, look, like, we created tension with this piece on purpose. And so, you know, I feel like there's value in us maybe embracing the tension rather than just being anti the tension. And so the next week, the pastor sort of changed the way it was presented to say, man, doesn't this video create so much tension for you? I know it does for me. Now let's talk about what God's word has to say about resolving that tension. Beautiful. Okay. That's a much better intro into what it is that we're trying to accomplish. So there you go. That's a strat. Make sure that your leadership is on board with the level of tension that you're willing to create in the piece that you're creating. It's actually a really good advice that I heard many years ago. Creatives are willing to invest a lot of tension into what they're communicating. They're okay with tension. They like it. They want to use it as a mechanism to communicate. But when you're working with a pastoral team, you have to make sure that they also are interested in communicating the same amount of tension. And it's not always the case. So you gotta be careful about that. You gotta make sure that you're on the same page with the pastoral team that you're supporting. If you're gonna preach or you're gonna do your own teaching, maybe it's a breakout session at a conference, or maybe you're preaching on the weekend and you want to load up tension into the presentation that you're giving, totally your prerogative. But when you are now supporting somebody else's communication, now you're in a different place. And so you want to be sensitive to how much tension they're willing to put into what they're doing. That may not be the way that they lead. They may not feel comfortable with that. They may not be able to pull people out of the tension and get things back to where, it's a comfortable level to listen and to learn and to hear again. They may not be able to do that. And that's okay if they're not able to do that. It's then not okay for you to add that tension, because it has to be able to get resolved. And if it can't, you're now creating issues for leadership, which is not our role. I missed a line here again on an S. Perfect. Okay. Here we are. I'm sort of torn on the tough sticking out, but I don't know. I don't hate it. Oh, there's the purple, I think, is probably what's throwing me off. Let's see here. This purple should switch over to green, because I'm now just making this all foothills. Yeah, that feels a lot better. Okay, good. Yep. That was it. There's a little purple element. I'm like, I don't understand why that's there, because that's not a mountain. That is weird. So, but now it's resolved. All right. So I'm going to look at this document again for the series info and get a sense of what it is they're trying to talk about. So one of the weeks is going to be about the laws of the Old Testament. There's some really weird laws. So we're going to look at how do we visualize some of these laws. Actually, it looks like two of them are going to be about law and about, essentially, it's why is it that it operates the way that it does? Why is it that when such and such happens, God's word says to then do this, and then the other thing here is going to be about some of these conquests that were happening. Interesting. Okay. So I think I could probably summarize this by saying it's about law and it's about war. Yeah, interesting. It looks like they're including some of the resolutions too, and like what is it that they're, talking through. That's good. All right. So how do I represent law, and how do I represent war? Well, for law, I'm most inclined to do like the 10 Commandments, or two tablets, that kind of thing. Maybe I could do a scroll. That could be another interesting approach, because the scroll is going to be a little bit more like the 10 Commandments aren't the problem. The 10 Commandments aren't the thing that's being primarily talked about. And so that doesn't feel like the right angle. Let me see what I can find here in terms of. So what I'm going to look for now is I'm going to look for how are these scrolls bound? What is an accurate old scroll look like? Because I want to give a reference to something that is like actual. It's gonna be a little tricky because we don't have a ton of room here. I'm trying to think where I would put it. Down at the bottom. Okay, that's what I thought. I've been to, I've seen scrolls in my day. My dad taught Hebrew, and so he has some Hebrew scrolls. Okay. So I'll see if a scroll will fit somewhere. How do I want to do this? I'm going to create another image, another layer here. I'll bring it up. Okay. All right, so we're going to do this down on the bottom. How big do we want to get? That's the question. It needs to be big enough because it's going to be an element. So that's one element. I'll do a scroll. Maybe, I don't know, I'll consider a tablet too, but we'll do a scroll. I'm just going to sketch something out real quick. So there's an idea of a scroll. You know, it'd be really interesting is if the texts that went through the mountain ranges were actually on a scroll. Can I do that? Because that references texts a little bit. That could be interesting. The handles is going to be tricky. I don't know. I like the interplay better. It'd be kind of interesting if tough represented war and there were, strong visual elements of like an army or like they're holding spears or whatever. But I do think there's enough on the canvas here where down here I can depict a war, and so texts does make more sense to live, like the scroll element makes more sense to live behind the texts. So that's intriguing. And then draw a scene of war where there's like buildings that are destroyed. This also I can actually use the divide between the desert and the non-desert as a mechanism to kind of have two sides of a battle. That could be really interesting. Yeah. And then, I can go for it in terms of buildings. So basically I could just have a big city down here. I could even have like a, walls come tumbling down type of a situation and just have rubble. That could be really interesting. I'm going to play with that direction. For some reason, that feels like a more overwhelming direction, but it also feels like the better direction. So let's start with the scroll. I'm going to move the scroll down behind the text color. That means I'm going to erase more mountains, which is fine. Scroll. So in previous graphics, I had just a box behind it. And so this is going to mimic that a little bit, which I think is cool. It's going to jive. Let's see how we want this to go. I'm going to have to go up to maybe here. Let's see. I want it to go a little further out. I'm going to go further out here. I want this to be a prominent element. Because this isn't just a background now. This is actually an element that is part of this, part of the visual story that I'm trying to tell. So, okay, so that's the paper. And then I'm going to need, the scroll basically functions by rolling around this. So we got that. We got I'm going to go to here. Okay. All right. I mean, I don't, it's a little too blocky right now for my liking, but I can change that to circle. This is really just mapping it out. And then how far down did this one go? Went to this line here. So I'm just going to draw a little bit of a measure. All the way. Let's go to here's the end. Okay, and then this is going to go here. It's going to get blocked by this mountain, but this just gives me a frame of reference for the actual dimensions. Okay. I mentioned this in the last live stream, but this is something that I was really hesitant about doing. I didn't want there to be like accurateness to my drawings because it meant more work and it was harder, and I eventually had to get over that, and I did. So now all of a sudden we got a new problem with the mountains because everything that is here doesn't actually belong here anymore. So this will be really interesting to see what this does to the overarching look. I think I want to keep that one because it's going to nestle in here. That's super interesting. Okay. And then this mountain's gone, which I don't mind. I think this actually has the potential to make it stronger with this depth. These guys in front are still there. That measure line is bugging me because it makes it harder to really lean into that perspective or that depth. Okay, so now where does this go? All of those mountains are in front. Are these foothills in front? I think they are. And then this guy is gone. And all of these guys are gone. And here. This is tricky. And then everything up here is going to be gone up to the line. Whew. And then this is gone. And that's gone. Okay. I think that's it. Then I'm going to go back to my scroll real quick just because I want to get some of these things. Like I need to see my perspective here. Am I feeling this? Is this working? Is it not working? What are my problems? So already I don't like the T. I'm not sure I like the E. Oh, we got a problem. Dang it. Okay, so here's the problem. The problem is this is only one block tall on the top, and so that means that I only want this to be one block tall on the bottom too. So that means this is actually going to be my line of reference. Oh, that's not going to mess us up too bad. Oh. Is that really what this has been the whole time? I thought I was at 2. Oh, it's 2 from the back. That's what it is that's bugging me. Yeah. Okay, it should only be 1 from the back, which means that it should line up with the foot of the... Yeah. Because... if you imagine the text as being like stuck to the paper, it would only be jutting out 1 from both. Oh boy, this is where it gets complicated. And this stuff isn't critical. Well, that's not true. This stuff is critical. If you don't sweat these small details, you're not going to get an illustration that looks good. Like, it's just not going to look right. And when it doesn't look right, like it does not look right. And so you get an issue there. Oh, good gracious, I've done it incorrectly twice now. Okay. So this does extend further down because the back of the wheel, the back of the scroll, goes to the scroll rests in front is basically what I'm doing. And so Scroll rests in front. It hits the bottom, the front of the text here. That's what it's supposed to do. And so I've once again, no, this is correct, but the bottom here goes down one more. That's right. Is that right? Man, welcome to illustration. Yes, that is right, because this goes into the back of this scroll and then winds around like that. My word. So that goes in front. That's not necessary. Oh boy. Okay. And so then yes, that's how that should look. Okay. You're not going to see the bottom of this anyway, which is hilarious. Okay, so right now we have a problem because the E can be seen sitting on the text or on the line, which I guess maybe the question is that a problem? Part of me wants to have the whole bottom of this covered. So let's try two things. One, let's try swooping this out and then swooping that in. So now we've covered, which one goes? Oh, but we've created a new problem here. Because, goodness, it's a weird mountain. So actually, maybe all we need to do is this. And then try removing this. And then bringing that guy over. So you get a little bit of it. How much of a problem is that? I'm just making stuff up at this point. So let's get rid of this scroll line again. We're trying to see where our problems are. Because what I don't necessarily love is the scroll just chilling down there. Because what's going to happen is there's going to be a purple portion illustrated, and I just think it's going to look weird. Is really what it comes down to. Let me try this. This might be the right thing to do right now. I'm going to put a color layer here behind the scroll. We're going to go with a light, really like the desert color. Let's go a little darker. Let's go there. And we're gonna try it out to see what this is gonna do for us. Sometimes seeing it is gonna help understand whether or not it works. Oops. Okay, and then we're going to go full line over here. And then we're going to go, I'm going to change this because I don't need to color these handles yet. Oh, that didn't go well. Okay. Looks like we missed that line a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to drop it in. Okay, and then we know that we're going to lose the mountaintops. And then, yeah, so where that T is a great example of what I'm concerned about, which is things looking kind of weird. Get rid of these scroll lines. S is fine. I don't like the E right now. That little corner bothers me. Where it's purple just below it. Oh man, I may just force this mountain to move over. Like, let's just give it a little bit more of a swoosh than normal. That actually looks really nice. I'm kind of surprised at how nice that looks. Trim text. Yeah, I'm feeling that. Okay, good. Tricky business. And then the scroll line, that's it. Beautiful. All right, well, let's color. Go back to our color here. Oh, wait. This is probably under text color. And then scroll color. Goodness. Hey, we did it. All right. Okay. So that, I'm feeling that. We got a mountain line that is out of sorts here. Don't like you. Get out of there. Okay. Now we got to figure out this one. So the T, let's do another swoopy. I like the swoop in particular. So not just another straight line, but a curved, slope line. I think that's pretty good. Oops. Okay, and then we're going to clean up. We got a couple layers here. We got the scroll line. I'm going to get rid of that. Perfect. We're going to have our trimmed text outline. Get rid of that. Whew. Scroll color. Get rid of that. And then finally our text color. Clean that up just like that. Okay, perfect. All right. I'm digging it. I think if we can make this a convincing scroll, we're in good shape. So I'm gonna clear out some of this so I have some clear working space. Okay. And then I'm going to fill in some of these components that are bugging me. All right, so now we got to embark on a scroll. So let's see if we can figure this out. I'm gonna go with a circle here. It's gonna kind of break the isometric look of some of this stuff, but I think it's going to be really important to the success of this looking like a scroll. So scrolls tend to have a round top and bottom. Actually, they sit above everything. And then they have like a handle up top that's kind of like that. That looks like a scroll to me, but I'm familiar with what a scroll looks like. And then I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So that we have some weight to it. Like, I really want this to be like, what is that? That's what I want to happen with this element. What am I drawing? I'm drawing on the scroll itself. So, let me get rid of this mountain because it's making it a little bit tricky to see what's going on. All right, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. And then you're not going to see one at the bottom, which is fine, but it just means that I have to make sure that this looks like a scroll at the top. I think I'm on the right layer. I am not on the right layer. Scroll. Okay, let's try it again. Select just this. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Because again, I want this to be very prominent. Okay, great. And then I need to erase this extra line that I took with it. Okay. I'm going to erase some mountain. Man, this is a little bit of a tedious part of the process, but I mean, welcome to illustration. Good gracious. Like, this is what it takes. in order for some of these things to get resolved. You just got to keep experimenting and say, you know what, I should add this now. Oh, I should have done this. Oop, I'm going to have to do that. It's just how it goes. All right. So now I need to draw. This is going to be inset a little bit. Erase. Yeah, all this is irrelevant because it's behind a mountain. What is this line? Oh, that was the previous scroll line. Okay, so that's what we got. Mountains. So we're going to connect again. Clean this one up. So the other thing I want to try to do here is make it make these mountain lines connecting to it very clear. It's clear where the mountain stops, so I want it to go into this, and then I want it to then go away. Like I want it to be a clear stop, not a. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I want to make it very clear that this is a scroll and this is a separate piece, and it's sticking out from the mountains. And so I'm going to make these lines a little bit thinner so that visually there isn't as much sort of demand that they're taking in terms of attention. And then the scroll will be the prominent element. So what happens with a lot of this stuff is the visual weight that you give the stroke or the outline is going to determine a little bit of where the eye goes. And so in this instance, I don't want to lose the detail of the scroll by making it way heavy visually, but I also want to make sure that it's not losing out on the visual competition with the other things. So I am going to make these lines a little bit thicker. And then what will happen is, let's go back to our scroll color here. So this area will be the paper or the parchment color. It's going to be darker. I'm going to add a shadow on this, on the shadow layer that's coming. Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to do it now. I'm going to drop this down, and it's going to be brown. So that's going to be a little bit of our cue, because then I'm going to do shadows on top of that, and so I think that'll have a nice effect. Let's see here. Erase, clean that up. Okay, now our scroll is going to be all the way to this edge. Then it is not going to be down here because of the mountain. And then over here. Okay. So something that comes to my mind as I'm doing this is, what is it going to look like to have this conversation with the church that I'm creating this for about what I'm making? And so a lot of times I think what happens is we'll send off a graphic to the department lead or whoever, and we'll say, okay, here's the graphic. Let me know what you think. I have found, both from a working with clients perspective, but also a working with ministry leaders perspective, I don't think that we should lose our discipline just because we're on a staff, and just because, you know, they told us to do a thing and we did a thing, and so then we're just writing them back. I really think we should focus as communicators in the church on caring well for people at a detailed level. And basically what I mean by that is we should be leaders in the way that we care about the people that we're working with and the way that we communicate to them. And so when I'm going to send this off to somebody, I'm going to send this off with clarity around the decisions that I'm making. So I'm not going to just send it off. I'm going to send it off with information and insights about why I made the design decisions that I did. And so all of this that I'm kind of laboring over right now, this will all get communicated to the church to say, this is what was going in my mind when I created this. This is why this looks this way. And I think it's a really important skill to develop as a creative, because what you're doing is you're pulling back the veil a little bit on the fact that creativity isn't random. I didn't draw a scroll because I thought it'd be fun to draw a scroll. Like, that's not at all why I made the decision to include a scroll on this illustration. The reason I decided to illustrate a scroll is because this references the law, which is one of the primary things that we're talking about when it comes to being tough texts. We're looking at text from God's word that's difficult for us to navigate, understand, handle, negotiate, however you want to say it. So we're struggling through some of these principles, some of these ideas, and that's okay. But that's why this exists. That's why this is designed the way that it's designed, because that's something that we're navigating together, and it references that text. So there you go. So we got a thing here. I like it a lot. I think it's working. I'm on the fence as to whether or not it needs to go like down a little bit, but I think it's okay as is. I do actually feel like there's a little bit of a tilt to it that I don't like. And so I'm gonna risk some extra work here in order to fix that. And so this should be more straight. So yeah, perfect. So what that's doing now is that is going to, that's going to match the horizon line that, or, you know, this grid that I have set up. So it means I'm going to have to do a little bit of touch up, which is fine, because sweat the small stuff. If you don't sweat the small stuff, you will not grow as a communicator or as a artist. That's the correct layer. That brown. Remove this over here. Oh, I'm gonna have to draw mountains too. So this is why there's a tendency to not sweat the small stuff, because literally this one change that bothered me a little bit, I wanted to make it better, and it does make it better. So for the record, I was right. This is better. However, it means that I have to make changes across 4 different layers. It means I need to draw some more stuff. I need to erase some more stuff. I need to realign some more stuff. And it's better because I'm leaning into that extra work. If I said, no, I'm not going to do that extra work, then I'm not going to get better. And the piece is going to be visually open. Like, it's going to be recognizable that it is open to improvement. And there were things that I could have done in order to make it better, but I didn't. I don't want my piece. Anything that I create, I don't want it to be in that category. I don't want people to look at it and say, wow, he didn't straighten that thing. Like, he didn't see that was a problem. I'm not going to see every issue with this piece. Like, that's just not possible. And to be honest with you, even if I saw all of them, I probably wouldn't be able to fix all of them from a time perspective. In some cases, maybe a skill perspective. But man, if I see a problem and I don't lean into fixing it, I feel like that's a little bit of a character issue, to be honest with you. And so when you're creating, be attentive to the issues that you find, pay attention to them, and then lean into them and resolve them, because that extra effort will be visually noticeable and seen in the work that you're creating. There's just no way that it won't be. So that's what I'm doing, leaning in here. One of the things I find with Procreate is when you rotate something, sometimes it gets a little soft. And so I wanted to go through there just real quickly and redraw some of those lines that look to have a little bit of that softness added to them, because I don't want it to look too soft on the final. Excellent. Okay, and then one last thing that I'm going to do here in order to... I'm going to try it. I feel like it needs something to really emphasize the roundness of this, and so I'm going to do... It wasn't enough. Well, that's too much. Essentially what I'm looking for is, what is the curvature of this piece? So something like this. Do I like that? I don't know if I like that. I'm looking at scrolls right now on the screen. And so I want this to be an accurate depiction of things. And they did not make scrolls two-sided. They were a one-sided document. Well, some of these, that one, I can't tell. Most of them are just one-sided. Can you see, the other side? I don't know. That's a piece of the question I'm trying to weigh here. I do like the roundness that it's added, but it almost feels like it's prompting me to then put lines on the other part of the scroll. So I'm going to lose it for now, and I'm going to trust that my shadow process is going to solve some of that. I am still being bothered, though, by the fact that the scroll feels like it should be lower. So I'm going to play with it just to see. Just to see. Okay. So should it be more like that? So it looks like it's sitting in front. I mean, I don't hate it. Let's see. Man. I don't know. Do I like that better? I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't feel right. I'll say that. So let's figure out where it feels right. Part of me feels like it belongs more like this. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Let's try moving the colors now. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I think it works. I like it. It's more accurate in the sense that the way that the scroll works is you have your scrolls and the volume of the scroll is above the text itself. So really this line, this back line here, it should be a straight line to the back of the scroll, not to the front or to the middle. So essentially like that's what we're looking for, maybe even forward a little bit more. I have another idea that I want to play with on this scroll paper. And what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to make this background wavy, not dramatically, but a little bit. And I think that that's going to help emphasize what I'm trying to accomplish here, which is just the accuracy of the scroll in terms of its location, like how it's built, how it's drawn. Hey, these are all the little things, man. Because what's fascinating is that if you don't resolve this, you're going to look at it and you're like, that's fine. And then you're like, oh, there's something weird about it. Don't know what it is. Something weird about it. And that's the difference between, compelling work, good work, well done work, and not. And so, yeah, you gotta sweat this stuff. All right, I'm gonna introduce this wavy line now to see what I think of it. So I'm going to get rid of the straight line here. I know where I'm going. I won't have to clean the whole thing up, though. So let's see. So we're going to go like this. Just above and below. And then that's going to meet there. Okay. All right. Let's see. Mountains. Going to erase. Clean this up. Just a skosh. Generally speaking, didn't go too far because I don't want it to be dramatic. I don't want it to be this like super flappy scroll. That's not the goal here. Not at all. All right, so we're going to erase some of these overages. And then I'm going to color in some of these underages. That's not a thing. Okay. And then this guy here, change it over to the tan. Yeah, I'm digging it. And then we've created some issues here. We're going to go through and clean all of this up anyway because we still need to draw the other scroll portion. Is this right? Yep. Yeah, I think so. Okay. I like it. I think it adds a fun little element. I might do a double. I might do it twice as deep, so that I can get a little shadow. I don't know. I gotta play with that, or I gotta think about that. Maybe is a better way to say that. Okay, so this is going away, and I'm gonna replace the scroll. I'm actually gonna copy it. I am generally not a fan of copying like this. I want to draw the element again. And I may do some customization to it to make it feel that way. But right now, I'm going to duplicate it because I'm very happy with how this one has come out. And I want this one to look like it matches. It's similar. Oh, we got a big problem here. Oh, dear. I'm going to have to draw the handle again for sure because the scroll is going above. Oh, no. Catastrophic issues. We know it's going to be in front. Oh, that's going to get us out of it. Oh, how about that? How about that? Boy, that was... Oh, boy. That was very, very scary. I'm going to bring these two together. Just a little pinch of the layer. And now... Did we do it? Oh, man, we did it. How about that? Oh, that is very exciting. Okay. So this line is going to have to get cleaned up. And then we're going to redraw. It's got to be at least a little bit. That'll work. I want these need to be straight. So let's do them again. There we go. And there we go. Perfect. Okay, these are looking sharp. So now we got some cleanup to do on the color layer. Gonna do some erasing. Great. And now we're gonna color the bulk of the parchment here with the darker brown, the tan. Okay. And then we're going to go back over the top with the dark brown for the wooden handles. When I look up a lot of these scrolls online, a lot of them are, they're like ceremonial, they're fancy. And you could make the argument that these might have been fancy, might have been ceremonial. I don't think it's critical to research if the scrolls of the law were... what exactly they looked like. I think there's some complexity in the sense that we don't likely fully know. And so I don't have a problem with illustrating from an interpretation, from an assumption, from an understanding, a common whatever. This is what this is where scholars have landed. I don't have a problem just sort of leaning into that. But in this instance, it's just not critical to say, yes, this has to be a silver handle, or this has to be a gold handle, or a bronze handle, or whatever. We're making them wooden handles, and tonally that works because we're really using like an earth tone oriented palette in terms of the colors of all of the different graphics that we've created. So in that sense, like it doesn't need, we don't need to overthink that portion of things. And I would argue you don't have to overthink anything. You just think. And so if it needs to be addressed, you address it. If it doesn't, you don't. And that's kind of that. And so that's a piece of the mindset here. I don't think we need to go that specific in terms of defining authenticity and accuracy. So feel free to disagree, but when we're creating things, like I did a series a while ago, it was on Corinth, on the Corinthian church, and I used a pillar, and I did research to discover what does a Corinthian pillar look like. And what's funny is all the pastors giggled, oh, that's Corinthian. Yep, that's right. But nobody in the congregation knew. Like, that's just, cool, good job, like neat little touch and detail. I do think those things make it better, but like in that instance, it wasn't critical. I like giving the pastors unexpected talking points. And so that's a piece for me that I really enjoy, is giving the pastoral team the opportunity to say, hey, this happens, or, this is whatever. This is an element. There's a cool little Easter egg, that kind of stuff. So, all right, I'm feeling it. It's kind of fun. So the texts portion is covered. I feel like we're good now. Actually, that's not true. I need to erase these lines. When I made them straight on the other side, now these ones look cattywampus. And so I'm going to need to straighten these to match the perspective. You can even see they drifted out just a touch. So we will address that. And here we go. Going to go straight. We're going to leverage the tool, Procreate's tool of making sure that something is straight on these, because I want these to be absolutely straight. That's going to be important for just how they look. Certain elements tend to have a little bit more of a demand for that than others. So like the texts, or the different text, some of it's not perfect, and that's okay. That's not critical to the visual comfort of the piece, but these little things like the scrolls is a big deal. It matters a lot. Okay, and then the next portion here that we're going to do some graveyards, and we're going to do some buildings that are in bad shape. So the next series is going to have a graphic next to us. So over here, you're going to have another series, the next series that comes. So I want to make sure that my desolation does not go close to the border. And so I'm going to focus further down. And so that's going to make that a little bit easier to avoid. This is going to be scroll color. I'm going to go back through here and name some of my layers to make sure that I do not forget what is happening. So we got mountains, we got trim text, mountains. I'm going to put my text color. No, that's fine as it is. I want the mountain outlines to be above the color as well. Scroll color, those are good. Okay. So now we're going to work through what does it look like for us to do some buildings that are busted. Got my outline. I'm going to do new layer. This is going to be city, broken city. This is good. And where did I put my arrow? I put it on here. Scroll color. I'm going to get rid of that. That was a visual for your benefit. Don't need that in the final piece. Okay, broken city. So I'm going to think for a second here. What do I want to do for rubble? Okay. All right. don't think that's right. Smiley face. Send out a text to somebody. Well, I think all right. What do we want to do? What do we want to do? So I've had several buildings in the past. I feel like it would be smart to have larger buildings so that you could see some of the rubble. I also like the idea of having a city that has walls and then have the walls be the things that are also destroyed. So I think this is actually going to be a pretty prominent city. I don't want it to be a square. I feel like that's boring. So let's go with some sort of a shape. I'll just get it out. We're going to do here. We're going to do here. Ooh, it's hard to see the grids here. Go to here. And then I'm going to go down a little bit. I'm going to go to here. I do need to leave room for a graveyard too, so for some destruction. You know what? I'm just going to go all the way. How about that? Okay. This is on the right layer. Yes. Okay. So now my question is, do I want to go down or do I want to go up? I'm going to go up one, up here, and then I'm going to go down. And what I mean by that is, how am I going to extend or extrude the city so that it's like that? So that's what I'm trying to do here. 1, 2, 1, 2. This is it's going to mess me up. Drat. Anytime you move it, you don't always get back to the exact same spot. So sometimes you got to redraw these lines along the grid. All right, so now we have, yeah, see, I don't like that, how that little jut out works. So let's do this. Let's just move it in, and then we can get rid of the problem all together. I think that's fine for a city. So this is going to go to here. So what I'm doing now is I'm really just building the actual city so that I can then tear it down. You got to start with it intact. I'm really inclined to draw flames here. I don't know why that's like jumping to my mind in terms of what makes the most sense. But I really do want to depict this city getting torn apart. I'm going to delete these regional lines here because they're not going to help me out. The other thing that's really nice about this is going to help the division between the different areas a lot. So I don't have to worry quite as much about what is it going to look like for me to draw like the desert topography next to the other. There's still some areas, but yeah. So first things first, we're gonna inset this a little bit. I'm gonna go half a block. Right here, the half line. I'm going to take it to the next half line. So that's how thick my walls are going to be. Yeah, I like that. This one's impossible to see. Here it is. I don't even know if you can see that on the stream. I can barely see that in person, so. This is going to go to here. Go to here. So it's helpful to have a grid so that you have a cheat sheet basically in terms of where all these lines end up. And then to make it real easy, I'm going to do a half line. Oh, wow. That's from the bottom. That's why. So it's 1, 2, and then the half line. So right there is where it's going to be. Okay. So that's where the inside wall goes. That makes it a little bit convoluted, but here we are. Okay. Oh, I know it'll help. The vertical line. Okay. So there's our city. So now we need to tear it down. Just got a text from a friend. I'm watching you. Not in a creepy way. Okay. So this isn't, it's a little complicated now because we haven't torn it down yet. But as we start tearing down the wall, it's going to start having a little bit more perspective to it. It'll feel a little bit better. I'm actually going to change some of the color here so that the background's easier to read or easier to see as I'm working on destroying this city. Okay. So this won't be the final background color. Oh, this is actually going to be an interesting problem. So here, let's do this. I'm actually going to create now a new layer with a new color because I don't want to lose this regional separation. That's not what I want to do. I'm going to create a new layer here. And so then this is just going to be the behind the city. Scroll color. There we go. All right. So this is just going to be what's behind the city so that I can get a better sense of what I'm destroying and what that looks like. And then this gives me some room for my graveyard, wherever I want it to be. It's getting real dark up in here. Okay. So I'm looking for some destruction. Let me read the portion again. I don't know. I think it cited Jericho. Did it? Let's see. Okay, so it's talking about narratives in Joshua. Okay, so it's referencing lots of narratives where there's the destruction of a city for so the destruction of a city. And so essentially the questions that they're going to be leaning into is like, how is this okay? And so they reference passages in Deuteronomy and in Joshua and in 1 Samuel. So really we're just looking for something that depicts a city being attacked or rubble is really what I'm going for. So I'm going to draw some buildings inside first because it'll give us more to work with in terms of destruction. And then it'll also add, it'll also add some nice depth to what we're trying to accomplish here. So it's going to be tall buildings. And so these are similar to what I've drawn in the past for different city references. These are going to be quite a bit bigger so that we can represent and so that we could show the visual of, destruction or things being torn down a little bit more effectively. I don't want to do the tiny buildings. I want this to be, these are big buildings. These are cities being leveled. And so this should just give us more to work with. It also clears up some of the complexities that we run into with our perspectives where, it's like, is this a city? Is all of the perspective right? How do we know where the walls are, all that kind of stuff. This helps clean up a lot of that. And so then I'll go through here and cut out some of these walls that won't be visible. This guy's going to go 2. It's always funny to spend time drawing the correct perspective and details on something that you're then going to remove. But the whole building it out this way helps the process make a lot more sense. This is gone because that's a wall behind. And so then it's too hard to do 3 levels of dimension, like referencing. Just draw it and then erase it. Here's the broad view, just taking a step back to get a sense of where we're at and if we like what we are seeing here. I don't know. Part of me wonders, I'm going to throw this out there real quick just to see what it looks like. I wonder if this city should actually go into the mountain ranges. Like, would that be interesting? Because what I want to do is I want to make sure that the graphic has a cohesive look across the entire piece. Right now it's pretty segmented. Not necessarily bad, but I'm curious if there's something that I can do to make it feel a little bit less that way. So let's see. How far out would this go? To here. Because the other part of this too is when you think about some of those stories, these weren't tiny villages that were being attacked or that God instructed the nation of Israel to go and basically undo. These were kingdoms. These were mega empire. Mega empire might be a little dramatic, but like these weren't small towns. You know, it wasn't like go to rural Samaria or whatever. It was like, no, like those people that you're afraid of because they have dominance over the land. Yeah, those are the ones that I'm talking about. Go to them. And it's like, holy cow. Like that's, I mean, it feels like it's crazy talk, but that's the story. And so they're not necessarily looking into the, like, this feels overwhelming side of the battle. In the series, they're looking at the, why would God command that side of the battle? But I mean, yeah, those are real questions to ask. So if we can visually represent a little bit more scope in some of these kingdoms that are being torn down, I'm actually thinking back to the Kingdom People graphic. Let me pull back to that actually. See if there's a way to integrate some of it. So the Kingdom People graphic has this idea of a whole city being surrounded by a kingdom. So I mean, this would be really interesting to take this idea of a kingdom around it that's then being taken down. I think I'm far enough into the piece where this would be like a major blow up. I'm not sure that I'm like ready to go that direction, but this is the idea of bringing in some of those other elements into extending the kingdom into the mountain ranges, is to elevate that a little bit. So let's see what we can do, having come back to that. Yeah, I think we're getting there. Let me try. I'm just going to try moving the whole thing. I mean, maybe embedding this even further is, I don't know. It's interesting. I think it's less embedding in and it's more extending through that's kind of on my mind. But again, I don't want to leave this other area too desolate. And so maybe it's a compromise of, somewhere like here. If I go here, yeah, that could work. It's still hitting the mountains. You're still going to have some of that depth that you can play with. Let's go down here. Do I like that better? I'm I'm trying to figure out if there's a way, like a relatively natural way for the mountains to end. Actually, I think this might be the one. Yeah, let's try that. So we have, make sure it's aligned on the grid. I think we're pretty good. Okay, great. So this, I think, is going to be the answer. So let's go back to our mountains and then get out our eraser. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull this mountain. I'm going to have it, actually, sorry, the other way. I'm going to have this mountain be in front. And so that will give us a little bit of that nestling into the hills kind of an idea. But then I'm going to have the mountain line that's going to need to come down so that it hits this, the base of the, like that. There we go. And so now we have this mountain. It's kind of jutting up against the place. I'm going to lose this purple mountain in the back. This guy doesn't belong. In part because the kingdom or whatever is now jutting into the hills in a pretty meaningful way. I think that's kind of fun. It'd be, I was gonna say it'd be interesting to do like a terraced build. I gotta watch out on some of these ideas because they gonna get real complicated if I chase too many of them down. But I mean, at the end of the day, like this is the tension. You got to solve the visual problem that's in front of you. Tough texts isn't. It talked a little bit earlier the last time we were streaming about some of the complexities that you're trying to negotiate as you're drawing these abstract, restoration, remembrance. Like there's just so many abstract ideas that we have to communicate in the church that we can't always visualize them literally. And so that's a little bit of where we find ourselves even on this drawing is there's some things that we can emphasize literally. And if we can, we should pursue that and see how far we can get. But I can't go so far down the road that I'm like, okay, now this is the map to Jericho and this is a map to where. It's like you got to draw the line somewhere. And so I think this is a good compromise of where are we going to draw the line? Where is this kind of kingdom going to expand to? And is it going to show us the idea that we're talking about in the series? Because again, this is not the message. This is the series this is the graphic that's saying, hey, thanks for joining us on this series. So you can't get so caught up in the details that you end up spending, 40 hours on a piece. Like context-wise, where am I at? I am at, how long have I been streaming? Started at 3, it's almost 5. So I've put in about 4 hours on this project. That's fine. Like we're not so far into the process that we're wasting time and we're, coming up with ideas that are just frivolously unnecessary. That's not what we're doing. We're really trying to solve the problem. How do we communicate this as effectively as possible? And so there's still a decent amount of work to go, but I think we're getting really, really close. So let's drop another building in here. I'm going to do another tall one because, again, I want there to be some emphasis on scale here. And again, these are going to be torn down. So these are just rough versions, boxed out so that I can have some degree of perspective on what I'm tearing down. But I think once we iron this portion out, I think we're actually going to be really, really close. So maybe we don't have as much time left on this as I thought. There's still the phase of once it's completed, shipping it off to the client and getting an assessment there. And then there's also, potentially changes, but then there's laying it out in the design side of things. The other thing I'm doing for each of these is I'm creating an icon that functions as the background element. And so, so there's some other steps along the way in the process, but overall, maybe we're closer than I think. We'll see. I'm also going to clean up this mountain so that it blocks this corner so that I don't have to worry about connecting that better. All these little tricks. How do I hide this? I don't want to do it. And then color. Clean up the color here just a skosh. That didn't do anything because I'm working on the wrong layer. Okay. Just want to clean it up to get a perspective. Oh, and then I'll add this here. Oops. All right. So now we have a sense of our city. That's pretty cool. I'm digging it. Let's get a darker color here instead of the one that I have so that we can get a real good sense of what this is going to look like. I'm going to go with like a red, like a clay. And that is the wrong layer. Try it again. Hey, there we go. Then I'm going to clean it up so that I can actually get a real sense here of what's going on. All right. Make it bigger. All right, and then I'm probably going to use the desert for the graveyard. Maybe some of the area to the left, but I think right down here is a really prominent, I think it's a good place for a graveyard. I don't think I ever thought that I would say this is a good place for a graveyard as a phrase. So that's fun. New opportunities every day to say that. That's maybe my challenge. That's my takeaway from this stream. My challenge to you is, can you say, this is a good place for a graveyard in your day today? I'd love to hear about it. All right. So now I'm going to do a gate, because gates are a pretty prominent element in Old Testament cities, and I want to have a starting point for where I can like focus some of this destruction. So I'm not going to go crazy ornate. It's just going to be an entry point that has some depth to it. And so that's what it's kind of meant to be. And I'm going to do another gate on the other side. Again, not ornate, not adding the embellishments. I'm not going through and adding all of the different incredible details of what these ancient cities would have. Like I think of the Ishtar Gate in Babylon, and just so amazing. That's not happening here. In part, now I will qualify it, in part because that's not what this story is about. This is really about other, historical things. And I guess if you wanted to take in an extra layer, you could actually do the research on what were some of the cities like in these passages in Deuteronomy and Joshua and 1 Samuel. What were some of the visual elements that were indicative of that time period? What types of materials is a common thing that I reference. What kind of stones did they use? What material were they using? Limestone? Were they using clay? What geologically did they have access to be able to inform the way that their cities looked? Like, there's all sorts of ideas that we can interject into the pieces that we're creating to help make them better. So part of the reason I'm going for the red here, back on the first series, Building Blocks, we used red to represent this kind of quarry. And so I know that at the end of the series, we're going to be seeing all of these together. There's not necessarily a reference to the quarry and to the city, but I think it's a really fun kind of connection for the mind to make. This Building Blocks series has this area more so because we needed to convey blocks somehow. And so we just sort of invented a quarry. These rolling hills are actually a topographical element from this region in the Pacific Northwest, because when the whole series is done, when the whole read through the Bible in a year is done, it's going to form a map of the Pacific Northwest. And so there's some regional cues that are being interjected here. It's a little bit of a play between, multiple layers of thinking here, but I think it's going to look pretty cool when it's all done. So I like referencing that color here because now all of a sudden there's some abstract connection that maybe people will make. So that's a pretty fun part of this. All right, so from here I'm gonna break the city. So let's blow this thing up. So I'm going to take out some pretty big chunks, and I'm just going to go through and chunk things out, and then I'll erase it and go through and really kind of begin undoing what I've just done. So, and these are going to be jagged lines. These don't have to be perfect by any stretch. Actually, I want this to be a little bit jagged too. So this whole corner is gone. How about that? I'm not liking the spatial problems, so I'm actually going to go for it here and do this one because it's messing with my spatial senses, and so I'm going to have to like figure out how do these things all come together. I think this will come down more and end up, and there'll be like a line here, and then this will just end there, be a line here, and maybe a line there. Not sure if I need these lines in here. I don't know. Let's see when we zoom out. I don't think they do very much. So let's just do, I don't like this. Undo all of it. I think it's going to have to be more angular. So let's try that. So this is going to be tricky. I love it. This is actually going to be the same line, and then this will be like here. And then this will be a line up top. And then I'm actually going to go all the way down with this one. Yeah, okay, now we're getting there. So this one's going to be just a hard line. Okay, the color in the background is going to be throwing me off here. I'm confident of that. But it's a start. And so then we're just going to pull out some just major chunks of these walls. And I feel like the fire idea is starting to come in to be a little bit more, it makes a little bit more sense to just sort of indicate that destruction is happening, but we'll see. It's tough because, fire and brick, it's not a common pairing. This guy's gone. And what we're going to do in the process is we're going to reveal more of the buildings, which is going to be an interesting thing to negotiate. Nope, don't like that angle. Let's go back here so I don't have to worry about it. And then this guy's going to come down a little further. And then he's going to be there. Perfect. All right. All right, it's starting to look pretty jacked up, which is what our goal is. I'm going to need to do some pretty major stuff too, though. So let's get rid of this whole wall. Because we're talking rubble. We're talking these cities don't function anymore. Because that's what the tough text is about. How in the world could God instruct the nation of Israel to do this? I mean, you're going to have to tune in and find out. It's funny doing work for churches like this, because there are times where you get a series or a graphic or something that you're doing for them, and you're like, that's interesting. This one's like, dang man, I'm pretty intrigued. Like, I kind of want to hear what they have to say. I think it'll be a good series. This one, I'm going to just break the whole wall. Yeah, I'm going to break it all the way here. this building too. Okay. Starting to feel like it's breaking. It's good. I'm probably going to remove big portions of the walls too at some point. And even just have a pile of rubble somewhere. Oh, how about this? Let's drop this to be like sloped down. Yeah, I like that. And then I could even do a like I don't know if I want to have inner walls like that. That's interesting, but I don't feel like it adds enough. Okay, and then down here. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to tear out a huge portion here. This one, I still want to stick to this grid as best as I can so that it doesn't feel totally out of place. But yeah, that's a bit tricky on some of this stuff. Yeah, that feels right. Okay. So this is actually going to be visible all the way down. All right. I'm going to erase this guy because this is no longer needed. And then he goes there. All right, we're going to tear this wall down. And then we're going to go here. That's going to give us that. I'm going to tear this more actually at this angle so that way we see both lines. We want to keep the depth going. We want it to be clear that there are multiple multiple layers or whatever. The depth of the wall is still there, but it's getting destroyed, or it has been destroyed. Okay, so now we're like full on exposing this city. And so here is where we're going to need a lot of rubble. So I'm going to take down this building pretty significantly here. Actually, let's leave the back wall up and destroy it like that. So this is definitely going to be, there's going to be a little bit of an inside view, I guess. Not really sure what to do with this building, actually. It's tricky because, so when you open up a building, you're gonna see a wall. You know what I mean? Like there's gonna be a living space. There's gonna be stuff inside, but I don't want to go through and detail out all of that stuff because that's not exactly relevant to the drawing. Like I think it's more of a distraction at this scale. This is just meant to imply destruction here, and so I wonder actually if we can just replace it with rubble, fill the whole thing full of rocks and stones and stuff. We'll see. Let's go like that. Add a little bit of depth. Yeah, I think that's working. And then we're going to fill it up with some just rubble. We're not looking for hyperrealism. We're looking for, there's a lot of stuff inside that building that doesn't look like the stuff that's normally in buildings. That's what we're going for. So in terms of the rubble itself, we're going to do, how do we want to draw this? I guess we could just draw hills again. That could be a sufficient way of presenting this content, or this piece of kind of visual information. Let's see. Let's play around with that a little bit. I feel like it makes more sense to do bricks. So let's play around with some bricks. Because I think of a lot of these ancient cities using these big slabs of marble or stone or like whatever stone material they had on hand. And so that's too big, but you know what I mean? It's a little bit more like bricks are falling than it is anything else. But I feel like we're making some really good progress here in terms of navigating what this is going to look like. I'm actually going to go through real quickly and color in some of these other regions so that we get a kind of a contrasty sense of what's going on here. So we have the walls, which are going to be the red, and then we're going to have the green, which is going to be the like ground underneath. I think that's going to give us kind of a good sense of what's going on in terms of just visually understanding. I think the green and the red are going to contrast nicely. It's going to be a strong visual element. And then it's going to be, like it's going to make sense. Visually, it's going to make sense. This needs to be here. I'm going to need to break that wall more, so we'll get there. But now it feels like I understand what's happening in terms of the... oh, did I color? I colored on the wrong layer, I think. Yeah, that's going to look real good. I thought I colored wrong. Maybe not. All right, and then I'm going to draw just a color just a little bit more over here so that I have... like where it becomes helpful is it's like, okay, so I have a wall and I'm tearing down a wall and now I need to see the color underneath because I've just revealed the ground. And so that's why I'm emphasizing or going through and doing this step, because I want to make sure that when I'm making this kind of destruction happen, that I'm doing so in a way that it fits with what's behind it. Otherwise, it's just not going to feel right. So. And then what I'm going to do, I already know what I'm going to do back here in terms of sort of helping this make more sense. There's going to be some shadow back here that's going to really help give it some of the depth that it needs to help it be understandable. All right, back to destruction. So I'm going to pull out this, excuse me, this wall. I'm going to pull out half the gate. Oh man, I am struggling with this perspective for some reason. How do we want to do this? Let's do a big amount here. Here. I'm going to go all the way to the gate. So I have a gate on the other side, so you'll be able to get a sense of what's happening. And then let's go to maybe here. Oh, that's interesting. So essentially this big portion is being completely taken out of the gate. That might be too much. Let me reevaluate that, and let me do this. Okay, I think that might work. So then what we're going to do is we're going to see the gate was attacked. A large portion of the gate was destroyed, removed. And then, too many lines. We're going to remove that. That's gone. We need a straight line here because that's destroyed. Gosh, this is tricky business. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this is why I drew those, or why I painted the way that I did, because now I know I need to be able to see behind it, and I can't, and I can, like, I'm bothered by that. So that's good. And that's what needs to happen. Is like, ooh, this doesn't feel right. Fix it. Okay. We will fix it. Okay. So then this is going to go further because this is the building. And then I'm gonna kind of jump back and forth here and do the coloring, just because it's going to affirm whether or not the perspectives are correct. Is this what I should be seeing behind it? Is there something that's not right? What is it that's, that's off? I feel like we've kind of lost the fact that this was a gate, but it's not the end of the world. It needs, rubble needs to happen. And then we're going to go back. Okay, that looks right to me. That looks very, very right. So that's good. Okay. We are going to destroy more. Let's destroy this section. I'm going to draw a line here, and we're going to go for it. Okay, so this is going to go like this. This is tricky because the grid doesn't exactly line up, but you can eyeball it enough to get pretty close, and that'll be sufficient. Again, this is a minor element. I mean, this is a visualization of one of the things that's being studied in the series. I like having a representative of the different portions of what we're studying or what they're going to be studying. So it's not meant to be everything. It's meant to be a portion. And so it's a portion. And then it's not going to be like this major focus. They're not going to zoom in on it. They're not going to highlight out like, look, this is a city that's been destroyed in these 5 ways. We're just trying to represent this is a city that's been destroyed. That's what's happening. What do we do with this? How do we navigate this? And so that's what we're doing. And then we're going to have oh man, I'm digging it. This is really coming along the way that it needs to. Okay, we're going to destroy this building. Let's see. We want that broken layer. Okay. We're going to knock out a huge portion here. We're really trying to emphasize some massive destruction here. And so some of these buildings, they still have tall portions, and that's okay, because I think when you contrast the height of what it was supposed to be or what it was when it was in great shape with the new current state, you're actually going to be emphasizing the destruction more. And you're going to be like, whoa, this was a big hit that happened. Correct. And so you want to have some of those elements that kind of represent what it used to be, because the reality is that this is a fictionalized scenario. No one knows what these buildings were supposed to be. They may feel like, oh, this is a modern, contemporary built city. It's like, no, we need to make it clear that things are not the way that they were designed to be. And the only way that you can really do that is by including some of what it was prior to the destruction. Otherwise, it's not going to be understandable. You're not going to be translating the fact that the destruction happened, that brokenness happened. You have to show you have to show a glimpse or a reference to the unbroken before it becomes clear that it's broken. So that's really what you're trying to accomplish when you're thinking through these elements. How do we destroy these buildings? We're going to have to do it in a way that references the glory days or references, the things of old, and does so in a way that lets you recognize what's gone wrong. I'm going to try some pyramids here, see if that... I don't like that either. I feel like I just need sort of the generic, like, rubble marks. I think my problem is I don't love how those look. Let me actually check. I have a different... the Christmas graphic had some snow mounds that might actually work here. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so these were just flat... Yeah, okay. I'm gonna interject that a little bit, see if that works. And then I can get some up on the wall so that it's like... Yeah, I think it's going to have to go up on the wall, actually, in order to show. Yep. Okay. And then I think shading is going to be the key on this. Let's do this all the places. So we're going to have some here. Some more over here. So this is really going to be the part that hopefully communicates the rubble, the just destruction. I think maybe adding some elements. Yeah, that'll do it. Oh, that's a face. Yeah, I feel like those are too much of a face. So let's try. Should all be the same way. So let's try. Does that feel right? Does it need those marks? We're getting destruction here. Piles of rubble. I don't know if we need those marks. I'm going to say no for now. We'll see how it looks once it's shaded. Shading really can be the difference maker on a lot of this stuff. It can really help us solve some of those problems. Okay, so now we have some pretty generic breaking down. We need this building to be gone. Let's see how this is going to go. Like this. That's gone. That's gone. Oh no, that's the broken line. We need that one. Okay. I'm going to have to break this guy too, just to make life easier. And then this guy as well. some mountains back there. Okay, and then we're going to go like this, like this, like this. Maybe yeah, I don't hate it. And then I'm going to fill it up. And we're going to lose that line behind the rubble. Perfect. Okay. Digging it. Digging it. And then we've created a bit of an issue now. I'm going to get rid of some of this coloring here. We're going to have to redo some of these mountains to reflect what we've now revealed, which through destroying some of this wall, which is going to be these mountain ranges right behind the city. Let's go back to our mountains, get our outline, and then we're going to fill these guys back in a little bit here. Perfect. Okay. It's looking like a pretty destroyed city. There are a couple walls that are still not broken, and I'm now regretting the size of this city because, oh boy, there's just a lot going on. So I am aggressively destroying this building. I'm just, you know what? Get this whole wall out of here. That's where I'm at. Get it done. And so we will. Let's do this line, and then we'd probably see a little bit here. And then these would actually join up. So that's better. Can't be too aggressive with it, because if you are, you create something that doesn't look at all actually like what you're trying to make it look like, which is now a whole set of different problems. So this can be steeper. Goes to here. Clean that up. And then this this line, that looks a little bit better. Okay. Going to go back to my color layer. We're going to erase some of this to make sure that we are destroying reasonably when we see the full depth. We can get our heads around it. Are we looking like a broken city here? I think so. And then we're going to go back to our mountains and fix a little bit of this. Oops. Okay, digging it. This is looking pretty sharp. I like it. I'm going to go color. I don't know if I'm on the right. Yeah, no, this is not. This is part of the color still of behind just this broken city. So I'm really trying to call out this broken city so that it has, it's clear that there is depth behind now. There's something that's going on behind this city that we are revealing through the process of destroying the building. So that is what we are trying to accomplish here. Okay. So really it's just depth, it's just layering, it's just those types of things that we're trying to accomplish through this portion. We want to make it evident that rubble, destruction, depth, now you see something that you didn't see before because of the brokenness. I feel like there's something in that phrase. You now see what you didn't see before because of the brokenness. But we'll save that for another day to unpack further. I'm going to break this wall, and we're going to do another major break here. I want this one to really, do some significant opening up. Because, when you think about these stories in the Old Testament, you think about the level of destruction that was instructed. It wasn't a little bit. This was massive. And so that's the tension. That's why this is a complex passage, or why these are complex stories, because these are really hard stories when you think about it. What's going on? Why is this level of destruction being called for, being instructed, commanded, however you want to articulate that? Why? What's happening? And so I need to show that. I need to show a lot of really massive destruction. That's tricky, it's complicated. That looks weird. I think this needs to come out a little bit so that we establish that this is a corner, and that will help this feel a little bit better. I can still just go straight down to the same thing. So I'm only losing a little bit. I'm just establishing that this was a corner, which will help this next, maybe. Yeah, maybe not. Let's see. Okay, do we like that? Maybe. That's a really tricky perspective. It's like foreshortening, but it's the opposite. Okay. Yeah, I think it works. Oh, I know it's missing. We're missing the ground line. That's the problem. Give me my outlines or my broken city. Okay, so where's the ground line? Ground line's back. Is it here? I think it's there. That's what's missing. Perfect. Back to this, and then we're going to color in this. Yep. Okay, that feels better. Okay. Oh no, we got a line. Stray line. What you doing? It's on the city. Okay. This happens from time to time when you're iPadding. You'll zoom and you're getting these rogue lines that appear out of nowhere. What is this guy? Is he supposed to be there? That's just a jumbled mess of stuff. So I'm going to say yes, he is supposed to be there. So I'm going to emphasize the line. He is supposed to be there. Okay, this is good. This feels right to me. And then I'm going to go through and color in this rubble to be the same red, because this is an indicator of the city being destroyed and torn down. And so this rubble mark, or these rubble piles, they're going to be darker, but they're also going to be contrasting with the ground here. I'm also going to need to look up, what does the desert look like in the Pacific Northwest, that desert region? Are there any clear topographical markers or foliage markers? Again, I'd mentioned in the last stream, being from the desert, from a desert, the high desert in Southern California, I have in my mind certain indicators or certain reference points to what a desert looks like, but that is not the same desert. And so I'm going to have to look up what are the elements of that desert. So this actually feels like it belongs the way that it's supposed to in this overarching map of the whole area. Okay, and then the last thing I'm adding here is I'm going to be adding in the tombstones. So this is going to be here, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to reference this overarching part of the narrative, the tension here of the destruction that is being called for. What is going on? And so we need to allude to the destruction, and we're doing that through the broken, city. But I want to take it a step further, and I want to also call attention to the destruction that's happening in terms of a deeper level. So I'm going to put the tombstones on the same layer as this broken city, and then I'm going to just start going for it. I understand these are not culturally relevant tombstones, or not culturally relevant. This is not what tombstones look like in the days of Joshua. But as we are communicating to a contemporary audience, this will be made understandable to them. I mean, this is what's going on. It's heavy stuff. So my question is, how far, let's do it all around the city. Hmm. It's kind of somber. It adds a heavy element to the piece for sure. But it drives home what's going on. This is tough. We got to reconcile this. Let's talk about this. Okay. So now I'm going to go dark here, dark gray, probably charcoal, That's sort of the stereotypical color for this, but after we wrap on these, we're probably going to have a really good sense as to whether or not we've done it. And so the last two steps, in terms of illustration itself, the last two steps are going to be adding highlights and adding shadows. And so I have a consistent light logic that's happening throughout all of the pieces. And so we're gonna reference another document just to make sure that I have the right angle, like the correct angle that is a highlight, and the correct angle that is a shadow. And we're also going to need to add snow to the mountains. That's another element here that's going to have to happen. I feel like this has been maybe one of the more complex of the graphics in the series. And I think a piece of it is because this series only transpires 3 weeks. So it's a relatively short series. There are some pretty heavy passages that are being navigated, but really it's not like this one story. It's really a lot more of like this idea at a larger level is what's complicated. And so this isn't like, here's the story of Jericho. It's like, this is the story of complicated things. And so that makes it a little bit more difficult. I'm kind of reflecting. I wonder if this will help. I'm gonna see what this looks like. I feel like the tombstones aren't clear enough. As I don't feel like they're clear enough to be tombstones. Yeah, so I feel like this is probably one of the more difficult series to illustrate, simply because we're really covering concepts, but we're trying to do it in a way that matches the overarching theme of the series. And the look and feel, it's all part of an annual series, and so that's the real key. Oh, I don't know if I like that. I feel like it just looks like a bunch of baseball hats or something. Yeah, I think it'll do for now. We'll see. This is one of the things where you get feedback too, and if as you get feedback, it's like, it's not working. I'm not feeling it. then that's fine. Then let's have a conversation about how we can make that work. Okay, I think we're at the point where we're pretty much done here. So now let's do our highlights and our shadows, and we'll sort of see where this all lands. So I'm going to move my highlights up to the top, and actually, yeah. Okay, so what's going to happen here? We're going to need to move both of these layers up, and then trimmed text goes above it, because otherwise what happens is my highlights lie over the lines, which I don't want. Mountains go above it, and then scroll will go above it. So all my outline work is going to go above the highlights and the shadows, and then the broken city. But then the highlights and the shadows need to go above the text and all of the colors. So let's name them, rename, highlights. Shadows. Okay. Let's start with the shadows. That's my favorite one to start with. We're going to go black, and we're going to go 40%, and we're going to go multiply. And then I have a specific brush that I use. It's part of a pack that I have. I think it's the Comics one. Let's see. It's a stipple brush, which is not under that one. Try Comic. Nope. Let's try Painters. Yes. Grainy stipple. Oh, my AirPod died. Fantastic. Doesn't matter, but it happened. Okay. We will. Let's see. Do we have it? Yes, we do. Okay, I'm going to drop this down because we don't need it to be huge. Great. Okay. I'm going to go back to another document here real quick, and I'm going to double check. Okay, so shadows from shadow is, I'm going to draw a box. Okay, shadow happens here. And then light happens the other way. White. That's not white. Okay. Also stipple, different layer. Highlights. This one is going to be, I don't remember my settings for this one actually. I'm going to have to go back and look. I think it is overlay. Let's start with overlay, and it's at, I think, also 40%. Let's try it out. So that one is going to be on this side. And then I need to add a background here to my box. Let's just do it on a layer that exists. Nope. So just like I wrote the text out in order to have a reminder for myself, that's what this is. This is just a reminder box because I want to make sure I get my light logic that matches everything else in my existing body of work for this project. And so this is just a little cue for me to say, okay, your darks are going to be on this side, your lights are going to be on this side, and then the top is going to be the top. So love it or hate it, this is the format, or this is the way that I have structured my lighting and my shadows. And so now it becomes being reliant on these cues, but also being consistent across all of my different artwork and all of my different documents. So we're going to start with shadows. So what's going to be interesting here is the prominent shadows here are going to be on the face of the text. I am on the incorrect layer. we want to go shadows. We'll start there. Okay, here we go. This brush is probably going to be too big. Yep, going to drop it down just a touch. If I can not do a ton of touch-up work on the shadows, that's ideal for me. Sometimes I'll, go over the edge, and that's that. Also, it's looking to me like 40% is not going to be the right opacity layer here. And so if that's the case, then I will, I'm going to go to another document after this. This is why I do these on a different layer. So I know that my shadow is going to go here, what my opacity is, what my settings are. I don't always remember those across documents because I like experimenting with different things. And so in between the different series that I've done on this project, I've done a lot of other illustration, whether it be for other clients or whether it be for just my own exploration and growth. And so one of those stretches has included buying a different pack, a different brush pack, and playing around with the different textures that gives. Really, really like it. I've mentioned that before in the stream. But that means that I don't remember all of my settings across every document because some brushes tend to respond differently. So like as an example, the stipple here, it responds differently because it's not just a solid wash of color. If you do a different, if you do the brush that I normally illustrate with, you'll see how much different that looks. And so the stipple is going to be lighter than this kind of shadow. And so the stipple is probably going to be at 30% would be my guess. But again, I need to be consistent with the rest of my drawings. And so I'm going to look and see what the rest of my drawings are, and then that'll give me my answer in terms of my numbers. Whereas, the one where it's a solid color, I'd probably take that one down to maybe 20, maybe 25. But it just depends on what the overarching look is you're trying to go for. And so for me, I have a generally cartoony-ish kind of a look. It looks hand-drawn. It's a little bit on the rougher side. Honestly, it's a part of why I buy the brushes that I buy because they accentuate that look. That's the look that I really enjoy. It's got a little bit of whimsy to it. And that's what I want to be evident in the work that I'm creating. And so, yeah, the brushes that I buy reflect that. And so that's to me, this always goes back to what's the mission of what you're trying to accomplish? What's the point behind what you're doing? What's the purpose of it? Those questions are what determine what you should buy and what you should invest in. So if you don't want hyper precision, I won't start there. If you want to create a piece that's whimsical and entertaining and enjoyable and lighthearted, you don't want precise lines. You don't want hard-lined solutions. That's not going to be the thing that solves the problem for you. So then I'm going to add a little bit of the shadow work here. And then in this instance, I'm going to draw out a bit of a beam there. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Oh, I need to clean up that area. It's good. I'm coming back through here. It's so funny to me. How many times have I been in this portion of the document and I missed that line problem? So this would be mountains, actually. And then it would be, yep, that's it. Okay, and then I need to go back to color, scroll color. I'm going to pick that, and I'm going to draw that. And we have fixed it. Great. Okay, back to shadows. Shadows. Black. And stipple. Got it. Okay. I tend not to do shadows on all of the mountains. I will do some shadows on some of the ranges. So there will be I'll do this. That kind of a line. So there will be separation that happens between them. But not yet, because I need to double check how I did it. So now all of the front faces on this are going to get shadow. And I think what this is going to do is it's going to help elevate the contrast between the planes significantly enough where it's like, oh man, I'm getting the broken part, the brokenness of this situation in a way that I wasn't before because of the contrast between the planes and the surfaces. And it's really what shadows and highlights tend to do. They tend to really emphasize certain pieces of the drawing in a way that impacts you. It's a really impactful way to bring to light certain elements. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to do the bottom portion here, and I'm going to leave the top portion for some highlights. We'll see how that comes out. The thing I love about approaching it this way and having it on its own layer, all that kind of stuff, I can try this and it could be garbage. And I could just be like, cool, I'm going to delete it. Easy fix. So this is a little bit of knowing where you're going and knowing the things that you're trying to experiment with. They let you set up a document in a way that's very, very helpful to the long-term success of the piece. You don't have to undo or redo a lot of work simply because you missed or you overcommitted too quickly. You missed the ability to set up the document for your success over the long haul. So this one's going to get on the side there. This one's going to get that. This one's going to get that. This one feels like it needs another one up here. Maybe. Yeah, I'm adding a little bit of form to some of these. So let's try it. Let's see if that helps us. The other thing I love about shadows is that it really does add form, like just out of nowhere. It's like, whoa, depth. All right, beautiful. Oh, you know what I can do here? Let's try this. Yeah, I like that better. What time is it? Oh, it's late. It's later than I thought it was. I need to stop for dinner here in a few. See if we got a hungry family texting me. No, not yet. I'll reach out. All right, let's see what happens here. I don't know if that message will pop up on here, but if it does. Ooh, I like that. I think that shadow looks real nice there. Okay, now let's check out what we did here on previous illustrations. Let's start with this guy. Oh, I see what we did. We did different colors of the mountains. Okay, that makes sense. So I think I have that on the palette that I created. So I have a palette that we started with, and then we've been modifying it to give us darker colors. That makes sense. All right, so I'm not going to touch the mountains right now. I'm going to do my highlight layer, and then I'm going to call it. And we'll be done with that. Oh, since I'm over there, let's check it out. Let's go here, and let's go layers. Highlights. Okay, what are my settings? Overlay was correct, 40%. Okay. Shadow is multiply 40%. Okay, so that's correct. So let's go back, confirm both are 40%. 40, yeah, 40%. Okay, and then 40%. Okay, great. So we're going to go to highlights now on the correct layer. Highlights are over here. So we're going to go this one. Yeah, perfect. I want to try to keep it on the plane faces if I can. So like if there's a bunch of faces that have multiple angles, I'm not going to do all of them. I'll just kind of gauge what the steepness is. Give me an idea there. So there, because that's kind of an open. No, I don't love it. That's steep. That's steep. That's what I mean right there. Perfect example. Right on cue. Oh, I missed some shadows over here. Full wall. That's tight. Got it. All right, one last wall here. Oh no, two, a couple more actually. See, as I say, one last, a couple more pop up. Seems like that is always how it is here. It's like, oh, are you almost done your work? Yeah, I'm almost finished. Great. Oh, actually, there's that's how it goes. We're gonna do shadows, and we're gonna go to black, and we need to get. What was the wall that I saw? These guys right here. And like those little things really make a difference. Oh, and this one over here. Yeah, those are important ones to observe. Okay. So one problem that I'm finding, Broken City. Let's erase a line here. This guy right here doesn't belong. And now we need to change this layer to be not the stipple. Oh, that's too big. There we go. Great. Okay. So now let's do the the highlights on the text, and I think that's about all we need to do. I love how that plays off of the yellow. It really kicks it up. Because it's like you don't want it to be too bright across everything, but you do need it to be a little bit bright some places. Like you want there to be contrast. And so now it's not this whole like gaudy over the top brightness, but you get that kick of light that you need in order to really like, yeah, draw some attention to these letters. Highlights are such an interesting part of illustration. I definitely wouldn't say that it's I don't feel like I have a deep understanding of how to do this stuff. I have a good spatial awareness, but it just is tricky to me to do the highlighting on an illustration. And so doing my best. Usually comes out looking pretty all right. But it's an area where I'm growing. My style is very much influenced by cartoons and you know the hand-drawn animation of kind of the 80s, 90s, that kind of era, and golden books, but like maybe not the golden books. There was one, it's like Busy Town, I think it is. That's kind of the vibe that I've always loved. And so highlights are like part of it, but it's not a primary driver. You know, see some of these other paintings or illustrations, and it's like they're very light logic driven. That's never been kind of my draw, but it's definitely something I want to get better at because I see how it makes such a powerful impact in an illustration. And so I want that. I want to be able to make impactful work. This is going to be a little bit of breaking the whole structure, but I'm going to throw a line in here and maybe change my mind. I'm changing my mind already. I don't love it. Okay, I think we have done it. So here we have tough texts. Oh, good gracious. I'm going to go ahead and drop the cube down at the bottom because I don't need it. It's only there for my reference. And then I'm going to do a little bit of research offline here about what I can do for the desert to see if there's something that will be a helpful addition. So we will try to resolve that. And I think we're going to be pretty close to ready to ship this off and get some input. Mountains, that's the other part I got to do. So I'll remember that. I'm going to do the mountains. But appreciate those of you who popped in. Thank you for tuning in. If you watch this after the fact and you have questions, man, let me know. I'll be streaming from time to time. I'm still working on defining a regular regiment. And so if there's a time that works for you and you happen to be watching the playthrough and you're skipping to the end here, I'd love to hear your recommendation or what's ideal for you in terms of a time. Have a survey in the community tab, and so feel free to answer that. To this point, during work hours is when everybody has said that works. Everybody, as in the two people that filled it out. But would love to hear from you if there's a time that works best for you. And yeah, hop on the stream. Let's chat church communications and maybe learn some things about layout and building a series graphic. Would love to be helpful in whatever way you would love some help. So until next time, see ya.